Joe, the quarterback bowl is upon us. It is Oklahoma and Auburn. 3 of the most elite quarterbacks that you're going to see is going to be in this game. Your thoughts on how Auburn and Oklahoma are going to put on a QB clinic?
Did you just say 3? Did you just say 3 quarterbacks?
Peyton Thorne. Well, I guess it could be 4. Hank Brown, Peyton Thorne versus Hawkins and Jackson Arnold.
I understand that Hawkins is supposed to start.
Obviously, I'm making a joke. I'm sorry.
I know that you're making. No, I got with the joke that you're making because this is a ridiculous situation. You're coming into this game
for both,
right? It absolutely is. It's a ridiculous situation. Was what I was going to say in response to you because you've got such inconsistent and messy quarterback play. Well, Auburn much worse than Oklahoma's.
Yes,
and you're hoping to bounce back and to have steadiness. Both of these teams in this vein are looking to right the ship. Who is in the better position to right the ship more? I really heavily feel that Oklahoma is going to win this football game because of how the types of flashes that we saw against Tennessee defensively and how dominant they were the weeks prior.
Well, I think because you got to throw in that Michael Hawkins has been named the starting quarterback too.
Yes. Yeah, well, the thing is, though, with Hawkins, I'm not ready to rush to judgment and think that that's going to solve their offensive problems because it's a true freshman getting thrown into a game that's a great athlete that a defense didn't prepare for. A lot of times when you throw a new guy in there that's a completely different skill set, defenses, the whole game plan goes out the window. You're kind of guessing and checking to see what works. This could be a little bit different this week. Can Hawkins step up to the challenge in his first ever start? But I have to go with Oklahoma and lean Oklahoma because right now Auburn is not playing clean football. 5 interceptions. They have 8 interceptions.
They got 9 turnovers the last 2 weeks. And I'm going to repeat that.
Yes. 8 interceptions and 10 fumbles on this season. They are constantly shooting themselves in the foot.
Yes.
I don't care whose fault it is. I'm disturbed by the amount of Auburn fans that are defending Hugh Freeze for criticizing his players. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole for a second here, but I have to pick against the team that constantly shoots himself in the foot, can't finish drives, and is having silly turnovers.
I mean, Joe, last week they fumbled. They were about to score a touchdown on a run play, and I think it was Alston maybe that fumbled in the end zone. Mm-hmm. I mean, like that can't happen. And look, here's the thing. The counter argument to that is, well, what if they don't fumble? What if they don't throw interceptions? Joe, it's apparent to me that Auburn can run the football, right? Like they can line up and run the football. Well, line up and run the freaking football. Like, why are you like, Joe, here's the thought that I had. And I know that you were behind and you were back from behind Arkansas and you were behind against Cal and you needed to throw the football. At what point when you were having success in the running game, did you not think, well, hey, our quarterbacks can't keep turning the football over, that maybe you should keep running the damn football? I mean, it's not like Peyton Thorne or Hank Brown are doing anything through the air that's having you any success. 0. And if you're going to let him throw it, throw a tunnel screen, do something, throw a bubble screen, get yardage. I mean, listen, I agree with you on this sense. Oklahoma's defense is really good. And they might have just lost to a really bad team. I mean, or lost to a really good team, in Tennessee. I do think that Brent Venables kind of overreacted, and now I'll talk about that in a minute with his quarterbacks. I mean, Jackson Arnold's got like one Mississippi back there before he's got to throw the ball. His O-line's been so bad. And I think that this is on Brent. He's a young coach in reference to being a head coach. So maybe he's, working through some things on how he deals with quarterback play. But, Joe, I got to be real with you. I don't know what's going on at Auburn. And as much as I know that, Jude, that place can be one of the pinnacles of college football. It can be. It's one of those kinds of places. They have shown that they can be. I don't know what they're doing on offense. A lot of people are blaming some things that they're doing defensively. The only reason that you were in the game last week is because your defense kept you in the game. The only reason. Mm-hmm. Hank Brown was abysmal. And then, we look at Peyton Thorne and we stat sheet watch, and we see that he had an interception against Arkansas and not realize that his young freshman wide receivers got to come down with the ball. And look, here's the thing. If that's the Peyton Thorne that I'm going to get, Joe, I can win with that. Or if I can't win with that, at least I know that I can be more competitive than what I've been. but you got to put them in conducive situations. Joe, this feels to me like a fractured locker room. It feels like a fractured culture in the sense of that everybody's just not doing their job to win football games. I think you as look, to your point, and I'm not going down this rabbit hole. I know that you threw some guys under the bus, himself included. But there feels like a separation that's going on.
Yes. Yep.
And that's the thing. And, Joe, if they fix that, I really think that they got quality players. Joe, if they don't turn the ball over 18 times, to your point, if they don't turn the ball over 9 times the last 2 weeks, or the last 2 times that they played in reference to Cal and
in Arkansas,
yeah.
They'd be undefeated right now.
They would be undefeated. And that's the maddening thing in all of this. Let me ask you this question. Can they, against this defense, though, can they start getting better there? Can they erase that?
I don't think so. I think this is a terrible matchup to be stepping into with all the problems that you're having, where they turn the football over. They get after the quarterback. We saw what they did to Nico. They got after Nico. There were tons of pressures that they produced on him and fumbles that they forced. You brought up a very important point here that I think is very just critical for this preview for what we're talking about. There is a stark difference between these two coaches and the comments that they had on their quarterbacks. And I think that that is going to impact the outcome of this game in what you just mentioned, the locker room being in shaky standing. You heard Brent Venables.
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it feels like it. Just
it feels like, yeah, we don't have any sourcing on that. It for somebody who's played on a Division I team that had a shaky locker room culture at one point, I can tell what that looks like on the field and the product on the field when you're making dumb mistakes like this. But to talk about those comments, you have Brent Venables who benches Jackson Arnold, and his comments are congratulatory of Arnold, saying, I believe that this young man is going to be great at some point and have a long career in football, but just not for us right now. And then you got goofball Hugh, who's throwing his guys under the bus after a performance win.
I mean, I'm not trying to go there, but just for clarification, he threw himself under the bus too. And I want to.
I understand that people kept bringing that up, that he also put himself into the mix. It should not have been uttered that his players were making mistakes and playing as poorly as they did. All I'm saying is that when wait, one second. What were we gonna say?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that when in this circumstance, I think that Oklahoma just had a bad loss last week and they will rebound, when conversely, Auburn, clearly battling through some stuff. I'm not going to put stock in a quarterback room that is probably lacking confidence after last week's game.
In fairness to the point that you're making, and where I agree with you, massively, is Hugh did say that I know that guys are wide open and we're missing them. So basically saying, hey, man, the plays that I ran, they're working. Just the dudes on the field ain't doing it. And that's the part that you're trying to make. Let's get to Oklahoma very quickly. Joe, we saw what Michael Hawkins did on the field. So I've said that I think this kid needs to start too. Do you think, though, that Brent Venables went a little too early in pulling Jackson Arnold last week?
I think so, and I tweeted this out. I think that Hawkins is best for their success this year because the offensive line's not playing well and you need more mobility. Arnold's a good runner. He was leading the team in rushing, but he's not the same level of mobile as Hawkins. If you had been tracking the Oklahoma situation in this team, apparently there was some hype for Hawkins and thought that eventually he could be a key player for them. It's just the timing stinks because you have Jackson Arnold and now they're in this position to get Hawkins onto the field. I, though, am just so sick of seeing how quickly in the sport of football itself, how quickly we bail on guys that have the tools to be highly successful before we give them the time and the opportunity to learn. And Sam Darnold, who's playing great with the Minnesota Vikings right now, is a great example of that on a much longer, broader scale. But in this situation, when you're Oklahoma and you've got a really good defense and you're trying to figure out your run game, I don't know why you're not going to let Jackson Arnold play unless you have zero confidence in him. And he was fine. He was not great, but was fine in the weeks leading up to Tennessee. Suddenly he's not good enough to start. And suddenly you have to go to Hawkins. I just hate this for the kid because he's barely played. He needs to make mistakes in order to learn, in order to get better. Not everybody is going to be like Nico. It takes time. And in a year where we have said on this show where Oklahoma isn't going to win the SEC championship game, it just was going to be too hard with the schedule that they have and some of the roster holes that they have. It should be okay if you finish the season 8-4, 7-5, and Jackson Arnold by the end of the year gets better every single week. I just hate this. I feel like it is completely.
I think he's got to hit the portal.
Well, I think that he's going to. I would anticipate that he does.
Here's the thing. Brent Venables talked about this today, if I'm not mistaken. I saw the clip today. So he was asked about the report that came out with Dillon Gabriel, and Dillon Gabriel saying he wanted to go back home. That's not what happened. I know that. I understand that Brent Venables can come out there and say, well, we had a meeting, we had a discussion. No, the whole fan base, along with Brent Venables, wanted to go to Jackson Arnold, and you bailed on him in the first sign of adversity. The second thing about this is, too, you should have kept this kid because you were warned by guys like us on this show, specifically me, which I was on a lot of Oklahoma radio and podcasts in the offseason. I went to every one of them. I went and found them today because we talked about this. Jackson Arnold with his offensive line is a mixture for disaster where Dillon Gabriel can get you in more favorable situations, and you bailed on him. They got to go to Hawkins because you're right. He's more explosive as a runner, and he gives them a better chance of win. And it's not an indictment, in my opinion, on Jackson Arnold. Was the interception bad? Yes. Was that actually a fumble? Maybe. I mean, I could see a debate either way. I don't know if that's necessarily on him. But, Joe, I think that Hawkins is just the more dynamic player. I think Jackson Arnold isn't ready, and he's, it's very unfortunate. In reference to the game for Oklahoma, for me, I'll say this. I just don't know how Auburn would have to surprise us and do things offensively, mainly not turning the football over, to have success on this defense.
They would need to play the cleanest game that they've had all year to.
They got to play They got to play the best offensive game that they've had since Hugh Freeze has been there.
Yeah,
and here's the ironic thing: going to the quarterback situation with Auburn, brother. Robbie Ashford is better than anything that you have in that room right now. He just is, and that's also unfortunate. So I just think that this defense finds a way. I think Hawkins scores. The only thing that's holding me back from picking Oklahoma, though, I'm telling you, man, going in that stadium, that eagle flies, them pom-poms get waved.
Wasn't the Arkansas game at?
Arkansas's play.
Cal walked in there. And won. Look, I get this. This is I'm not saying that it is not a difficult place to play. But this season, the way that they're performing and playing, they're taking away what's supposed to be a really difficult home field advantage.
Well, here's what I'd say about Auburn. They went up against a defense last year in Georgia that's better than this Oklahoma team with pretty much the same exact personnel, and they were able to find success by running the football. Joe, what did we talk about? What did we talk about with Peyton Thorne coming out of that Georgia game? Hey, dude, this kid can run a little bit. He's actually pretty athletic. You need to go back to it. I just don't think that you will, and I think Oklahoma might have a little bit too much for him, Joe. And that's the crazy thing in all this. All right, but let me just throw this out there before we move on. I also remember Oklahoma losing to Kansas last year.
I think it's a different year. It's a different year.
No, they lost last year. It was one of their losses.
No, I know. I'm saying it was last year. So I don't know if that
I know, but
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.